baby.
We're back, baby. Let's go. This is one of the best days of the year. It is draft season. We are back. The last time we recorded our second annual NCAA tournament draft where I beat David's ass again to get to 2-0 in the NCAA tournament. This is our fifth competition doing this. We've done NCAA football and the NFL last year, NCAA basketball twice. The only competition where I did not beat David was in this exact competition last year. I would say arguably the one that I want to win the most, the one that I feel like I should win the most. So I'm out for blood this year. David and I have had a lot going on in each of our individual lives. Myself and my company, we just got acquired a week and a half ago. So I just started with a new company. Dave, do you want to give an update on what just happened to you recently?
Yeah, I tore my Achilles playing basketball. I made one cut on the first play of the game, made one move to the basket, felt it pop. So if I were to turn my screen slightly to the right, you'd see my leg propped up in a soft cast on a pillow, just resting and recovering. I had surgery a couple days ago. So I could look at it a couple ways. Poor me, I got surgery. But at the same time, I got a couple days off of work. A couple days I was able to use to deep dive on this upcoming college football season to defend my championship and send John packing. So I think we're
Dave, you're playing this one injured. Maybe that'll be beneficial.
An excuse like, hey, I lost because I was drafting on oxycodone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good excuse. It's not bad. But today is officially the start of college football season. Notre Dame plays today. USC plays today. I'm going to talk myself into watching New Mexico State versus UMass because for some reason that's the 7 p.m. ESPN kickoff game. A little bit of a hot take as someone who loves college football. Just let's just start it next weekend. Like, I can wait. I gave a really graphically sexual, vulgar analogy for what week 0 of college football actually is to my good friend Billy Ray yesterday. I will not repeat that for the viewers, for all 6 of you who are watching this on YouTube. But point being, I'd be okay with waiting another week, but I will be consuming every single game this week. My wife's at a bachelorette party. I have the house to myself, which means that football, even if it's bad football, will be on all day. But Dave, let's get into it. I think we should start off really quick by reviewing exactly what we're doing here. We are going to be having a draft. We will flip a coin. It will be random, and the winner of the coin flip will get to choose either the first pick or the second and the third picks. We will alternate picking from there. We will each select 2 teams from the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, the SEC, and the Pac-12. RIP to this format. It's not going to be able to exist next year with the Pac-12 probably being nothing. But in addition to that, we will each be picking 2 wildcard teams that have to be from Power 5 conferences or Notre Dame. Last year we had the AAC with UCF, with Cincinnati, with Houston moving over into the Big 12. We pushed that to the side, and we're just going to go wildcard picks, which adds a little bit of extra strategy. Last year, if I picked 2 teams from the ACC, I knew that David could then wait to the end of the draft not to take any more ACC teams because I was out of my selections. But now, if I try and wait and do that, David could get a third ACC team before I even have one, which, depending on the strength of the individual conferences, I think that that's a little bit of a twist that's going to be fun for us to finagle this year. Every game counts. 1 win equals 1 point. If you beat San Jose State or if you beat Ohio State, that counts as 1 point. If you win the national championship or if you win the Belk Bowl, that counts as 1 point. We had some great drama last year watching random Michigan State games when they were terrible, cheering on Oregon and Washington and all these other random teams were teams that we hadn't chosen, teams that we had chosen, teams that sucked, teams that were great. And we're really excited to jump back into it again. Any other things you want to say, Dave, before we get started?
The only thing I'd add is right before this, I went through my recent Venmo transactions this year, found the $500 that I sent you for losing the March Madness wins pool. So let's just say I'm motivated, man. I'm looking for revenge. Like, I'm down 3-1 all time across all these competitions. If I don't do well, if I don't deliver during football season, I mean, it's going to start to become John being like heavy favorite in this. And like, I cannot have that.
Yeah, Dave's paying.
There's a lot at stake for me right now. So
my future kids' college are getting funded by Dave.
That's the nightmare scenario, right? Or I turn it around and John's paying for my kids' college. You never know.
Yeah, the other element of this that we need to include in there is that this is for $500. Every competition is for $500. It's over the course of the season. It's an investment in us having fun with each other. And look, we're good friends. It's just $500 amongst friends, back and forth. The vision for this long term is that it's likely going to all even out, but it's fun to compete.
Well, and it's interesting too. There's symmetry because we do college football and the NFL, which happen obviously at the same time. So if we split like we did last year, nobody pays anybody anything.
Right.
But if someone wins both of them, that's John or I losing $1,000,
Right, right.
Which there's a decent amount at stake. Yeah, it's fun.
Right. It's really fun. All right, I'm going to share my screen with this coin flip app, and we're going to get this thing going. Dave, as the defending champion, you get to choose heads or tails. We're going to randomly flip it 5 times, and whatever it lands on in the end, you get to choose, or I get to choose. All right.
I'm going to go with heads, man.
All right. I didn't mean for it to do that. I thought it was going to actually flip it 5 times. Should I redo that since I wasn't expecting that?
It did 5 flips at the same time. I'd say that's fair. So it looks like I lost, right? So you picked.
Yeah. So I won. Okay. I wasn't expecting that. I was thinking it was going to.
I love it. The simultaneous coin flips. Let's speed it up.
All right. So that means I won, which means I'm going to choose second. I'm going to choose second
and third.
And I'm going to let you go ahead and go first. I'm going to put the ball in your court, and
I probably would have made the same choice, but I'm happy to pick first. And I think I got it. There's one team that I have to choose here, right? It's got to be Georgia to kick this off. It's the back-to-back champions. No team in the history of the AP poll era has won 3 championships in a row. So that's the history that the Georgia Bulldogs are chasing this year. I feel really good about the offense. They're bringing back tons of elite players. Brock Bowers at tight end, Ladd McConkey, a wide receiver. They got a great running back duo. They're returning most of their offensive line. On the defensive side, it feels like every single year they lose 5 guys to the first round of the NFL draft, but they just replace them with 5 stars across the board. They're an absolute powerhouse in the recruiting game. So I think their defense is, for as long as Kirby Smart's there, is going to be in the top 5. I love that they play an SEC East schedule rather than a West schedule. They're still doing divisions this year, right? Is it the last year of SEC divisions, or did they scrap?
No, they're still doing divisions, and in my opinion, from my understanding, they're still going to continue doing divisions into the future too.
Good.
Maybe a little bit different.
And so, like, their one really tricky game is at Tennessee. Otherwise, they have Auburn on the road, which they'll probably crush Auburn. They host Ole Miss. They have that neutral game versus Florida that can sometimes be tricky. I mean, the big question is, okay, Stetson Bennett, he might not ever start a single game in the NFL, but as a college quarterback, he was an absolute stud, man. Like, he was so clutch. What he did versus Alabama the first time around in the national championship, and what he did bringing them back against Ohio State in the fourth quarter in the semis last year, I mean, the guy was insane. And so Carson Beck has really big shoes to fill. I don't necessarily think he's going to have to be great for this team to be successful, given the level that I expect the defense to play at. They might be kind of like a 2010s Bama type team where, like, they can have a Greg McElroy type, or Jacob Coker type performance at quarterback and maybe still win. But I still feel really good about the offense. They do have a new offensive coordinator. Todd Monken jumped to the NFL, but I think I got to go with Georgia here, right? I mean, they own this sport right now, and I feel pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's you have to choose them as number 1. And again, this got me in trouble last year, but I have so many biases against some teams and just against narratives in general that I don't want Georgia to win it all again this year. And I will be actively rooting against Georgia all season to hope that they lose, just because, so I am fine with letting you have them in this instance, even though they are the prohibitive favorite. They have the highest over under entering the season. I'm going to do something interesting here. And this is what I was kind of hoping to be able to do. I'm going to take Michigan and Ohio State back-to-back with my second and my third picks. That locked me in for 2 Big Ten teams. And they have the second and third highest win totals of any schools entering this season behind Georgia. Michigan, if they're going to win a national title, this is their best shot. J.J. McCarthy's back. Blake Corum's back. Donovan Edwards is back. They are, I believe that I saw the other day that they have 8 offensive linemen that have draftable grades. That's insane to think about. You know that they're going to play really good defense, and they've gotten a taste of it 2 years in a row. You look at their schedule, and I feel confident that this is me chalking them up to a minimum of 10 wins. Could they stumble against Penn State? Yes. Could they stumble against Ohio State? Yes. I mean, last year I thought that they were going to lose to Ohio State, but who knows? Maybe the tide has completely turned there. But yeah, could they stumble? Yes, but it feels very difficult once you get past that to say that this team is going to lose more than 2 games max during the regular season. And the same goes for Ohio State. New quarterback this year. I don't even think they've announced who their starting quarterback is going to be, but the fact that their over-under is 10.5 speaks to how incredible they are around the quarterback. Marvin Harrison was number 2 on Bruce Feldman's freaks list. And, it's crazy to think that there's somebody that is even more of a freak than him. He might be the number 1. If Caleb Williams didn't exist, he might be the number 1 draft pick entering next year's draft. He's that kind of talent like a Jamar Chase that is going to be an elite top 5 draft pick wide receiver that instantly changes the team the minute he steps on the field at the next level. Look, it's Ohio State. They don't have bad seasons. Maybe that'll be the kiss of death when I say that, but they are so loaded across the board in comparison to everybody else in the conference, even on paper compared to Michigan and Penn State, that, again, let somebody prove to me that they're going to lose more than twice before I start thinking that Ohio State's going to win any less than 10 games. So if I can enter this competition saying, okay, I feel very confident that I've chalked up a minimum of 20 wins, the likely Big Ten East winner, a likely playoff team, I feel very good about that. And there is the real world scenario that could happen where they're both 11-0. They play each other at the end of the year, and one team goes on and wins the Big Ten at 13-0, and one team goes on and still makes the playoff at 11-1, just like last year. Right. It could happen again. And so I feel good about my start.
I had Michigan as my number 2 team. I had Ohio State as my number 3 team. So I was wondering if you were going to go for getting both of them, given they're in the same conference. I respect the boldness of it. Ohio State's won 11 games every year since 2011, not counting the pandemic season where I think they went like 9-1 and made the national championship game, right? Yeah. So they're locking in an insane level of consistency there. And then Michigan, they're returning a lot of their production from a team that has kind of tilted that Ohio State rivalry in their favor. So that's super interesting. It puts me in a little bit of an unexpected position.
If Michigan's going to do it, this is the year to do it. The schedule sets up great for them. They are experienced across the board. They're loaded talent-wise. I'm not sure that I buy the Jim Harbaugh, like we're going to have, 20 some odd guys drafted. I don't know that I buy that, but I do buy that they are absolutely loaded. And if you look across the landscape, Georgia's starting a new quarterback. Alabama's starting a new quarterback. Ohio State's starting a new quarterback. Yep. They're like the programs that have been at the top that have been the ones that Michigan cannot get past. Michigan comes in with experience and talent that is relatively comparable. And if they're going to do it, this will be the year that they do it. I think it'd be really cool to see Michigan win the national title this year. Like I would like to see that happen. I think that'd be a fun scenario, but we'll see. I like where I started off.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Like I have full faith in Michigan during the Big Ten season to dominate. Like they could easily be another 12 or 13 win team. I do feel like they've gotten exposed a little bit in the playoff the past couple of years. Like when you have that month to prepare in between the end of the regular season and the playoff, that's kind of where those recruiting advantages really start to show out, right? Like talent's really going to win out when you give the coaches more than a week to prepare, right? Right. And kind of catch the other team off guard. That's why you saw Ohio State punching with Georgia in the playoff, even though Michigan was better than them at the end of the regular season, right? So can they make that leap and kind of close that talent gap against like an SEC elite opponent? That's the big question.
Remains to be seen. But all right, who do you got?
I'm gonna go Alabama. And I know it's weird that they almost feel like, I'm not gonna say under the radar, but like they don't have the shine this year that they've had in years past, like at all. And I think a lot of it is because they've had a revolving door of elite quarterback play for the last like half decade plus. And now I think Jalen Milroe officially won the job, right? And their offense is ranked first or second in offensive efficiency every single year since 2017. And so that's the kind of standard that he's going to have to be able to hold up, because the other secret to Alabama is their defense has been very, very good, but it's fallen off from like their world beating, unbelievable levels these past couple of seasons, right? They've gotten in more shootouts. They've had to pull out more close games with clutch quarterback play rather than just beating everyone like 49-10 for what it seemed like they did for a decade. At the same time, they recruit better than anyone in the country to this day, right? Like the only team even on their level is really like Georgia and Ohio State. So the roster is still loaded with elite players. They still have tons of skill talent. The receiving core was kind of a weakness last point, but I think people will step up in that regard and they'll have a better year than last year. They still have elite pass rushing talent, like Dallas Turner, I think, is the next guy in line that's projected to be a top 10 pick. Saban has never gone 3 years in a row without winning a national championship since
he's crazy. That's crazy.
He's never gone 3 years in a row.
That's crazy.
The schedule also really tilts in their favor. They get LSU at home, who barely beat them last year. Like, I still think it was a little fluky that LSU won the SEC West last year. All credit to them. But I still like Alabama in that matchup. They get Tennessee at home. They're at Texas A&M. Who knows what we're going to get out of A&M? That's super high ceiling, super low floor, as we saw last year. It's going to be really interesting. At the same time, I'm buying into like the infrastructure of this program, right? I'm buying into Saban getting to almost play like the underdog card this year. Like, that leaves me pretty bullish, despite there being flaws with this team that showed out the last couple of years that leave me concerned that maybe they are starting to trend a little bit in the wrong direction.
Look, you can't argue with any of the top 4 picks that we just made. I think that, and you knew that this was going to be the first 4 in some element of combination. I think that at some point in time, Alabama is going to have a bad season. I don't think that that'll be this year, right? I don't know if you listened to Russillo and Danny Cannell the other day, just doing a little bit of a preview too. And Alabama, Danny referenced Bud Elliott's blue chip ratio. Alabama has a 90% blue chip ratio. 90%. Stupid.
Which is the proportion of the roster that's 4 or 5 stars, right?
Yes. Absolutely stupid. So, you talked about infrastructure, and that's where I'm going to go to with my next pick. I'm going to choose Clemson for a few reasons here. One, you talk about teams that aren't getting as much attention as maybe they typically are used to getting or have received in the past. Florida State is the sexy ACC team this year, and I get it. I love Florida State too. They'll get drafted in this draft probably over the course of the next 5 or 6 picks, maybe even sooner than that. Clemson, of all the teams left, Vegas likes Clemson the best. They have a 9.5 win over-under, juiced negative 188 to the over. But there was, for how almost disrespected it felt like, if you thought about Clemson football last year, you would say, they were down or they weren't as good as they've been in the past. They went 11-3. They won the ACC. They had their 12th straight 10-win season. Cade Klubnik was the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in the country, and he's now the guy going in. There's no quarterback controversy with DJU. They still are one of the top 10 team talent, best teams in the country, and especially in comparison to the rest of the ACC outside of Florida State, they lap the field. You look at their schedule, they have 3 ranked opponents on their schedule entering the season. They play Florida State at home, Notre Dame at home, Clemson or UNC at home. And with the other teams that I was thinking about seriously in trying to, let's say that those top 4 teams were the first tier. You looked at the second tier, how I was trying to organize that group on my draft board. I think that the ACC is the weakest conference outside of the top echelon. The difference between the top 2 teams, the top few teams, and the rest of the conference is a larger gap than, let's say, the Pac-12 or the SEC or the Big 10 or the Big 12. And so, I felt best about going ahead and grabbing Clemson here. Other thing that I haven't mentioned, they brought in Garrett Riley. last time that Dabo switched offensive coordinators when it felt like the offense was stagnating. They went from a 6-win team to a 10-win team when they brought in Chad Morris. I'm just saying, don't be surprised if you look up and Clemson's 11-1 playing in the ACC championship in a rematch against Florida State for the right to go to the playoff.
I had Clemson as my number 5 too. I was hoping you were going to lean towards that Florida State hype and have them higher on your board than Clemson, but I think you're reading between the lines the same way that I do, right? Like Clemson and sort of again like Alabama, an underdog position with the culture that Dabo's built up and the talent that they have compared to their peers within their conference. I mean, I think it's a great pick.
We'll talk about Florida State more shortly here, I'm sure. But just real quick, if you're in a direct comparison, I love Florida State, and I want Florida State to do well this year. But if you were to say direct comparison, Clemson or Florida State, and you say who's going to win the most games, Florida State plays LSU and they play at Clemson. And they have to play Florida, which, Clemson has to play South Carolina, but okay, so that's a wash. But if you're just going to say straight up, I have to play LSU and I have to play at Clemson versus I get to play Notre Dame at home and I get to play Florida State at home, I'm going to choose the team that's not having to play LSU and not having to go on the road when it's a head-to-head toss-up kind of environment.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, so back to me. I'm in an interesting spot now. Let's see. I think I got to lock in a Big Ten team. I don't know for sure. I know you have an anti-Penn State thing, so maybe I'm taking them too high, but it scares me to think you could lock up all 3 powers in the Big Ten East before I have a chance to get a single Big Ten team. So I am going to go with Penn State here. I think this team, if there's any year that they have the talent to actually surpass Michigan and Ohio State, kind of similar to what you were saying about Michigan. If there's any year they can win it all. To me, if there's any year Penn State can win the Big Ten, it's a season like this season. Like they have the talent across their roster. They have a loaded running back duo. Nicholas Singleton was a stud as a freshman.
Yeah, he's so good. He's so good.
They have a projected top 10 pick at left tackle, Olu Fashanu. In the secondary, there's this guy, Kalen King, another projected first rounder. At quarterback, we always kind of said with Penn State, super talented team. Their floor was raised by Sean Clifford. He was solid enough to keep them as like a 9 or 10 win team every year, but like their ceiling was limited. Well, now they have Drew Allar. I don't know how you say his last name.
Drew Allar.
Drew Allar. All I know is this guy was a ridiculously elite recruit. He was the number 3 recruit in his class last year. So he's coming in as a sophomore. He's taking over the quarterback position. He has the ceiling to be better than J.J. McCarthy, to be better than whoever wins the Ohio State job, and to lead this team to national contention. Their schedule is a piece of cake. I mean, they host Iowa, they host Michigan, who's owned them in recent years, but like getting them at home is massive. They're at Ohio State. That's not many teams go into Columbus and come out on top. So, but still, like this could be an 11-1 season, and if they make the play, I mean, I think they have a legitimate chance to make the playoff. Their biggest weakness is they're kind of small up front. So when they played Ohio State and Michigan last year, they ran all over Penn State. I didn't necessarily see them like revamp the roster through the portal in a way that makes me think they're going to be better against the run this year. But I'm going with ceiling here. I want to make sure you don't get a complete chokehold on the Big Ten. Maybe it was a mistake because I know last year you refused to take Penn State. It cost you. So I'm assuming you weren't going to refuse to take them this year. But let me know if I was wrong.
No, I think that's something that was definitely on my mind. And in terms of choke holding you out of the Big Ten. And I am a big Penn State believer this year because I think that this is the best quarterback that they've had. I think that he's long-term, better than Hackenberg, better than McSorley, which is difficult to think about or say because McSorley was a really, really, really good college quarterback. And I think he's better than Sean Clifford. And all 3 of those guys are, guys that played on NFL rosters. I think that Drew Allar is a guy that has, top 15 picks in the draft kind of potential. He's big. He can throw, he can run, and he has really high upside. They're loaded in the backfield. I have a funny Olu Fashanu story from recruiting, but that's for an off-camera kind of thing. We had a coach on our staff who didn't think he was good enough, and he's going to be a first-round draft pick. But anyways, yeah. So I think Penn State's going to be really good this year, and I think that there is again, we talked about the Ohio State-Michigan world where they're 11-0 playing each other. I think there's also a scenario where everybody goes 11-1 and they split. Each one of them wins their game against the other three at home, and you're looking at it in late November saying, what the heck are we going to do with these three teams? Because one of them is going to be the representative in the East, and you might, in some instances, not want to be the representative in the East. But anyways, I feel like that was a good pick. Maybe you could have pushed it because I was going to take this team next, no matter what. I'm going to take Southern Cal. I'm going to take Caleb Williams. That's my the entire thesis here is I have Caleb Williams and I have Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley does not have bad seasons. If you're going to say that Lincoln Riley builds teams that can't win a national title, okay, that's fine. But if you're going to tell me anything other than that, I'm going to disagree with you. Lincoln Riley wins games. Lincoln Riley has the best quarterback in the country. Caleb Williams, Southern Cal, in the Pac-12. Everyone's going to be gunning for them this year. It's their last year in the conference. I get that. The schedule's not the easiest. I think the Pac-12 is really good. It's a lot better than it's been in recent years. There's a lot of teams I could see come out of the Pac-12 and win the conference. But do I want Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley on my side, or do I want to be rooting against them again? I paid for that last year. I'm going to try my best to not pay for that this year. So Southern Cal is a priority for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I had them in similar range. I think, it's going to come down to the defense, but even with a terrible defense last year, they still won 10 games, 11 games.
I think they won 10.
Yeah, I think
they lost to Utah. They lost to Utah twice.
And they don't play Utah on their conference schedule this year, right? I think
they do. They play them at home, though.
Oh, they get Utah at home? Okay.
Yes, they get Utah at home. That one weekend in October that's like the best college football weekend of the year. I think it's October 21st. It's going to be incredible. They do play Utah, but they play them at home. And Cam Rising's been up and down. Who knows? But yeah, they lost. Their only losses last year were those two games to Utah. They lost at Utah 43-42, where they gave up the 2-point conversion at the end. And they lost in the Pac-12 title game where they got destroyed. And that's the one that sticks in your mind of like, wow, these guys got run over. But they played some physical teams last year. They beat UCLA in a really high-scoring game, but UCLA was a very talented physical team. They beat Notre Dame last year, who was a physical team, and then they lost to Tulane, where they blew that game. They're up like 21 points in they're up big against Tulane. But anyways, yes, they lost 3 games last year. I think they went 11-3. And if you said, is Caleb Williams going to get me to 10 wins, I would say yes. So that's my thesis.
Only other thing I'll add. So Lincoln Riley hit the portal to try to patch up the defense. I think he made some great additions. One of them, I think, is a home run. This guy, Bear Alexander from Georgia on the D line. Anytime you can get a guy from Georgia on the defensive line whose name is Bear, I think his chances of being a fucking monster. Let's be honest.
Big boy.
Okay. Back to me. I think I'm going to go for the SEC chokehold. I'm going to use a wild card here. I'm going to take LSU.
Interesting. Okay.
I just think there's 3 teams in the SEC that recruit at an insanely high level. LSU is one of those 3 teams. I want to force you to kind of figure out the rest of the conference from there. And I know Tennessee has all of the hype, but they're not as much of a home run to me as they seem to be kind of getting hype-wise nationally. LSU is extremely talented, and they're bringing, like, in terms of returning production across a lot of these contenders, they're on the high end. They're returning their starting quarterback in Jaden Daniels, who was a really good dual threat last year. Defensive end Harold Perkins Jr. is maybe the most talented defensive player in the country. Like, I'm pretty sure he finished with double-digit sacks last year as a freshman. Watching him, he gives me like Von Miller type vibes. Like, he's an unbelievable player. They bring back on the defensive line Mason Smith as well, who got hurt last year, One of their weaknesses was defending against the run. I think getting incredibly talented players like him back is going to patch up that weakness. I mean, I think this is going to be an elite defense. Like, I'm really expecting this team to be, at worst, a top 10 defense with an offense that maybe doesn't have that explosiveness that they had during the Burrow years, but is still really efficient and moving the chains. The one thing, that dropped them a little bit down my rankings, had me put them below an Alabama team that they actually, beat last year, is the schedule, right? They have to go to Tuscaloosa this year. They're at Ole Miss. They have Florida State in a neutral site opener in Orlando next weekend. So the schedule isn't easy, but it never is in the SEC West. And I really believe in Brian Kelly. Like, I know, again, kind of like you were saying about Lincoln Riley, like, can he build teams that win the national championship? That remains to be seen. But is he consistently going to build a team that wins 10 games? I think that's been more than proven out over the last decade.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take. I think that, yes, I did just get boxed out of the SEC, and I have some teams that I like there, but now at least it gives me the chance to wait to figure out what I want to do there, because there's the thought in my head that I might want to get a little bit wonky, but now I have some. Okay, I gotta think there. I gotta think there a little bit. All right, I'm gonna go with Texas. I think Texas is the favorite in the Big 12. I'm a believer in Sark as a coach, and I'm a believer that Quinn Ewers is going to be much improved. I think that it speaks volumes that there's been no quarterback controversy there, even with Arch Manning being brought on, even with Malik Murphy looking so good in the spring. I think that even losing Bijan Robinson, Texas has done a great job of recruiting, and people have said Texas does a great job of recruiting all the time. You can tell the difference in the players that Texas has now compared to 5-8 years ago. The 4 and 5 stars that they've been getting are actually playing up to the level that you would think that they would heading into their careers. They play at Alabama. It's going to be a fun game for us to be head to head week 2. I think that their schedule is pretty difficult. The Big 12 in general is just going to be kind of difficult, but I now leave this draft with 4 of the 5 power conference favorites entering the season. And I wanted to be able to lock that up. In terms of Vegas odds and in terms of just my perception of what I think is going to happen, I now have 4 of the 5 power conference champs, or not champs, but predicted winners. And I feel good about that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I figured he'd be high on Texas. I like them too. Don't get me wrong. I just need to see it come together. Everybody knows they have the talent. They're a top 10 team recruiting wise every single season. There's a reason they get all the hype that they get, but they need to put it together, right? I think they finished as a top 10 team last year efficiency wise, but somehow still went 8-5. Like, they got to figure out how to close these games out late. If they do, they're going to make the playoffs, right? So the upside here is tremendous. But there's always the downside with Texas that it just falls apart for an inexplicable
right, which is certainly what I'm worried about. That's definitely the downside case.
In the Big 12, though, I think you could say that about everyone.
Well, shoot. I mean, last year you had Oklahoma. Yep. And we would have felt – you mentioned a stat earlier about Ohio State and how successful they've been for however many years in a row. You mentioned a similar stat about Oklahoma last year.
Yep.
And the Big 12 ate them alive. I think that the Big 12 can do that again this year. And I think if you told me that there was a similar scenario, I think that Texas is one of the most high upside, low floor teams in the country, because that program in general, similar to Miami when they have expectations, when things are great, you believe that you're unbeatable and then nobody can touch you. And when you step on the field, you're intimidating the team that's across from you just because of the brand that you're wearing on your uniform. But on the flip side, when things start going poorly, it can snowball faster than at a lot of other places, because once you get punched in the mouth and you realize you're not as good, things completely spiral out of control. And there's a lot more egos involved. There's a lot more, high level. It just is a lot more variables. With all that being said, I'm willing to bet on the upside here with where we are in the draft for a team that is favored in their conference that could go 12-0, could be the team that wins the national title this year. It's not an outlandish scenario to think about. So
yeah.
I like where I'm
I
at.
mean, if Texas breaks out this year, you're going to win this competition. Is really what you're going for there. So I think it's worth the risk. I'm going to go with Oregon next. You got USC. I see Oregon as on a very similar level to Southern Cal. Not only from like how they produced last year, they had a similar record, but I think talent wise, recruiting wise, they perform very similarly. I think Caleb Williams is the better quarterback, but Bo Nix was a stud last year. I mean, nobody really saw that coming given his ups and downs at Auburn, but he was incredible. I think he's a sleeper Heisman contender. They're bringing back a good amount of their core skill position group. They got a running back named Bucky Irving. It's going to be easy for me to root for a guy named Bucky. They added some guys in the portal, some good wide receivers from both Southern Cal and Alabama, which we'll see how they produce. But I always think it's good when you're getting like the leftover former blue chip guys from programs like that, where those positions are so stacked that those guys might not be getting opportunities to produce like they're now going to get at Oregon. And I think the defense was disappointing last year, but has the talent to jump from a team ranked like in the 60 to 70 range, like very mediocre, to like, I think they have the talent to be at least a top 40 defense, right? Like, given the quality of their returning production, what they've done in the portal, and the incoming freshman class, which we never know how freshmen are going to do, but it's a top 10 class. You got to think some of those guys might produce right away. Downsides with Oregon, they did lose 4 starting linemen from a really great offensive line last year. They lost their offensive coordinator, so there's a lot that's going to be changing. I'm pretty sure Bo Nix has had a different offensive coordinator every single year of his college career. So if there's any guy that's like used to it, it's him. And I just feel like, kind of like Clemson, I feel really confident in Oregon's talent level compared to their Pac-12 peers. Schedule's pretty tricky. They're at Texas Tech in a non-conference game, at Washington, at Utah. They get USC at home. They get Oregon State at home, who's getting some hype this year. I think this is a team that can legitimately, like, I get that USC is the conference favorite, but I don't think anyone would be surprised if Oregon won the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they make the playoff. I like Oregon a lot this season. I'm a Dan Lanning believer. I think he's proven that we should trust him and believe in what he's going to be doing there based on how he's recruited, and also based on how he was able to get them to respond after a complete annihilation, lamb at the slaughter to Georgia last year to start the season. Like, I think that's, it's been covered, but an underappreciated element of when you're a first-time head coach and in your first game, you take your team across the country with a quarterback who his entire Auburn career has been getting beaten up in the press and amongst the fan base for not being very good. And you're a program that has high expectations and you go lose like they lost to Georgia. That can be something that shakes your confidence. That can be something that forces your team to spiral out of control. They got that back on the tracks and they played really, really well last year. And I think that I agree. I really like Oregon this season. I think that, when I was evaluating the Pac-12, just outside of the whole, like, who's favored by Vegas and all of that type of thing, I value Caleb Williams over Bo Nix, but I think that I could easily see Oregon win the Pac-12. My pick here, I was kind of surprised you did not take them. I'm going to take Florida State because I really wanted Florida State, and I was not sure I was going to be able to get Florida State and Clemson, but I now do. Look, I'm a big Jordan Travis guy. They dominated in the portal. Jaheim Bell, sorry, Richie, Gamecock legend, is now going to be playing tight end for Florida State. But look, I think that I like experienced quarterbacks. I like guys like Jordan Travis when they're playing in college football. The guy, look, I hope, for his sake, I hope that he goes on and has a great professional career, but he's the type of guy that is a great college quarterback. And I want that guy leading my team. He's an absolute stud. We talked about the schedule. We talked about how they play LSU already. We talked about how they play at Clemson. I could see a world where they split the Clemson games because for the uninformed, the ACC now is not split into divisions for the conference championship game. It is the two best records. I think that Clemson and Florida State are the two best teams in the conference by a wide margin. So locking up and putting some pressure on you to try and dig and find some wins in the ACC is exactly where I want to go here. And plus, I get to be on the opposite side of that LSU game. I get to root for Florida State, ACC pride, shout out. And I think it'd be cool to see them make the playoff this year. I think that they have the potential to do it. Now that at the same time, they also have the potential to be the team that's getting all the hype preseason that then flounders and flops. There's a lot of red flags when it comes to that to me too. But give me Florida State.
Yeah, I maybe should have picked them just given what I'm going to have to dig through amongst the rest of the ACC now. But the more I looked into them, the more I got scared of that downside with a really tough schedule, right?
Yeah.
I have LSU beating them. If that's going to be huge right off the bat, this competition is
Right.
going to get spicy. Like, I'm going to need LSU to take out.
We got LSU, Florida State, and Texas, Alabama in the first 2 weeks.
Yep. So those are going to be huge. They're at Clemson. I don't expect them to go into Clemson and win. They're at Pitt, which is not an easy game. They're at Florida, which might be more difficult than it appears to start the year. So, like, just schedule wise, if they drop any of their gimme games, suddenly you look at it and it's like preseason top 10 to 7-5 or 6-6. Like, that could definitely happen with them. However, talent wise, significant gap between them and whoever you think is the third best team in the ACC.
I like that a lot of their gimme games are at home. I like that they play, games that are against solid teams. Like Syracuse is going to be solid this year. Duke's going to be solid this year. Miami's going to be solid this year. They get all of them at home. Mm-hmm. Let's just say that, we Florida, Pitt, Clemson, and LSU. Let's say that they lose 3 of those 4 games. They still go 9-3. It's hard for me to find another team in the ACC that I feel confident to get to 9 wins. So I think this was, as much as I want to root for Florida State, that contributed to it. As much as I like Jordan Travis, that contributed to it. As much as I wanted to box you out from the rest of the ACC, that contributed to it here. I'm happy to have Florida State at pick number 11.
I like it. Just thinking about what I want to do next. I have a team in mind. I'm just thinking about what I believe you're going to do.
I have a team that I very much so would like to draft within my next selection. So I will be curious to see what you do here. I have them lasered in.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with
We have to put you on the clock.
I'm gonna go Notre Dame.
Okay.
So that's my second wild card team. I really like that they're bringing in Sam Hartman. Like, that's a significant step up from the quarterback play that they had last year. And they were like a power running team last year. Now that they get to mix in what should be an explosive passing attack, I think the offense is going to make a big leap. The defense, they're always talented on defense. They got guys in the secondary. I know they lost Isaiah Foskey to the NFL, but I expect they'll unearth another pass rusher. They always do. And I really, really like what Marcus Freeman is doing there. Like, everything you said about Dan Lanning, I think you could say about Marcus Freeman too. And the fact that they, instead of getting blown out by Georgia, they start 3-3. Everyone's like, write them off. They lost to Marshall. They suck. And they finished the season really strong. Ended up going 9-4 after a 3-3 start. So schedule's going to be tough. They're playing a bunch of pretty solid to really good ACC teams on the road: NC State, Louisville, Clemson. They get Ohio State and USC at home, so I get to go against you twice with my team being at home. I think it's going to be interesting. I get that the schedule is tough, and this might end up being an 8-14 because of that, but they're really talented. If they can just beat one of Ohio State and USC, then I think they're going to be well set up for a double-digit win season.
I think that Notre Dame is a good pick, and I believe and agree with all that you're saying. I am fired up that you did not take this team because I really, really, really wanted to have this team. I'm taking Wisconsin with my first wild card pick. I am excited to watch Wisconsin play this year. I am a very big Luke Fickell believer. Look, they did a good job of revamping their quarterback room. They brought in Tanner Mordecai. He's thrown for 7,000 yards the last 2 seasons at SMU. The name is escaping me right now, the UNC offensive coordinator, but they brought in the UNC offensive coordinator. Yeah, they brought in Phil Longo, and they still have Braylon Allen. I think it's Danny Cannell talked about this, so I don't want to feel like I'm just stealing his shtick, but it's true. And it's a couple years ago, UNC, when they had Sam Howell, Michael Carter, and they had Javonte Williams, they ran the ball all over everybody. Then those guys leave. They have De'Ami Brown. They've got Josh Downs. They're throwing the ball all over everybody. I think that this is an offense that's going to be flexible to beat the opponent the way that they need to be defeated. You look at their schedule. They avoid Michigan. They avoid Penn State. They get Ohio State at home. They get Iowa at home. If you think about who are they having to travel, they get Nebraska at home and Matt Rule. They're having to travel to Illinois. That's going to be a difficult game. They're going to have to travel to Purdue. Purdue, I think, is going to be down this year. They're replacing a lot of players and they lost their coach. And they have to travel to Minnesota. That's a rivalry game. But I think that Wisconsin is far and away the best and most talented team in the Big Ten West. And what this does is it allows me to have, in my estimation, the 2 favorites in the East, the favorite in the West, and a team that has a schedule where I think that they're going to be able to rack up some victories, knowing what I know about Luke Fickell, which is that the guy is a damn good coach. And Wisconsin has players. Wisconsin's done a pretty good job recruiting, especially in comparison to the rest of the division. They just were kind of stuck in the, 20 years ago. There was no real innovation. Things had gotten a little stale there. And when things get stale, as someone who was a part of a program where things had gotten stale at different periods in time, I know that you can underperform the amount of talent that's on your team when that is occurring. I think that Wisconsin has underperformed the last few years, which gives them a great opportunity now for Luke Fickell to hit the ground running and overperform this season. Yeah. So I really wanted – I went into this draft saying if I get the number 2 and 3 pick, I'm going to take Michigan State and Ohio State, assuming David takes Georgia. And then I want to wait and push Wisconsin as far as I can to take Wisconsin too, because they are a team that I really wanted.
Yeah, I'm high on them too. I had them as a top 15 team on my board for a lot of the same reasons you said. As much as I believe in Fickell, I do have concerns about just a first-year coach taking over a program in general and all the change that's going to induce. But yeah, I mean, I picked them last year and they really disappointed me. I thought they had the talent to be by far the best team in the Big Ten West. And then it seems like every single year they can't separate themselves from like Minnesota and Iowa for whatever reason. But yeah, it's going to be jarring to see them like throwing the ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know how much they're going to open up the offense in year one, but I feel like they're going to, given the quarterback they got from SMU. Like SMU's offense threw the ball a lot. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, I like how this is playing out. Like I have a stranglehold on the SEC. You have it on the Big Ten. This has gone very differently style-wise to how we drafted last year.
I think it's going to be fun. I mean, look, we know this is going to be fun, but I think that this is going to be really competitive. So the teams, we talked about me having biases. The teams that I have are like teams that I was coming into the season that I would like to root for. I would like to see Florida State have success. I would like to see Michigan have success. So this is going to be good. And I also actively root against Bama and LSU. And that's because they've been so good for so long in Georgia. But anyways, who you got?
This is the difference between us, John. I'm the cold and calculating one. I'm crunching numbers. I'm just looking to get wins. You have a layer of your emotions involved. I'm on.
I know. I like the underdogs, man. I like the teams that have gotten their asses kicked or who are like not supposed to win. I know. I'm biased to that.
So this is my riskiest pick so far. I'm very grateful you didn't take them though. I'm going with Oklahoma. They burned me last year, but I want Oklahoma this year. I feel like there are a lot of pieces in place for a notable bounce back from this program. Like they went 6-7 last year, but they still finished as a top 20 team in Bill Connolly's S&P Plus efficiency rankings. They lost, I think, 5 of their 7 losses were by 1 score or less. Dillon Gabriel got hurt. When he got hurt, they looked like the worst football team I've ever seen in my life. Like their offense, whoever their backups were I don't know how Oklahoma's rolling out backups like these guys. They couldn't throw like a 3-yard pass. Dillon Gabriel is back this year. His coordinator, Jeff Lebby, always coordinates a high-level offense, especially when he's paired up with Dillon Gabriel. They were a high-level offense last year when both of those guys were going. Venables is recruiting extremely well. They brought in the 6th-rated class in the country. He hit the transfer portal really hard. They were terrible on defense. It seems like they've been terrible on defense for a decade. However, Venables is a defensive-minded coach who coached a great defense at Clemson. I'm betting on him figuring that out. And if he can raise the ceiling or the floor of that defense, then the ceiling of the team is significantly raised.
Yeah.
And their schedule breaks nicely too. Obviously, they're going to have Texas on a neutral site. That's going to be a massive game, as it always is. They get TCU at home. They're at Oklahoma State, who lost their starting quarterback from last season, so I don't really know what to expect there. I just think a lot of pieces are in place for this program, who has dominated the Big 12 for the last decade plus, to just, brush off last season's outlier result and get right back to where they always are.
I'm with you. I'm buying heavy the bounce back for Oklahoma this year. I think that they've done an incredible job in the portal, and I agree with everything you said, especially about Venables being able to figure it out. They've recruited some elite guys on the defensive side of the ball, like true game-changing dudes. They loaded up on both lines of scrimmage in the portal like they did. I would say, either them or Florida State did the best job in the portal in terms of securing top-end talent on both lines of scrimmage. I'm heavily buying the Oklahoma bounce back. And
were you going to take them if I didn't?
Yeah, I really wanted Wisconsin to be able to box you out of the Big Ten. I really wanted Florida State. Like I had Florida State and Wisconsin. I would have had Oklahoma in the same tier, a couple picks higher, but strategically I passed on them just to try and because I like the other teams in the Big 12 in compared to Oklahoma, or like I see some more scenarios in the Big 12 than I did with like Florida State. Or with you get like the 5th team in the Big 10. But I am very high on Oklahoma. I had them ranked way higher than 14th. Like I really like them this year. I think that you talked about that stat last year. It was an outlier season. They are loaded. I think they're going to be great. Yeah. Okay, where do I want to go here? This is going to be this is the draft at this point in time is very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Okay. Shoot. I can wait there. Okay. I'm going to go with Washington. And again, I'm leaning on high-level quarterback if I'm having to make a decision between two different teams. Michael Penix, he's 23 years old now. He's super experienced. Like one of my first memories of Michael Penix was when he dove at the pylon in the Indiana-Penn State game. And it feels like that was forever ago. That was back during COVID in 2020 when he was like scoring the game-winning 2-point conversion or game-winning touchdown. I forget what it was, but he chucked the ball all around the yard last year. Washington was a surprising team based on the fact that they hadn't been performing up to the level that you would have expected entering into last season. Give me the Huskies. Give me the second team, my second team in the Pac-12. They have to go play at Michigan State. We'll see how good Michigan State's going to be this year. They get Oregon at home. They get Utah at home. They get Washington State at home, which should be a very intense game. But they get all those games at home. Vegas likes Washington this year. I'm going to side with the quarterback who has a chance to be at the Heisman Trophy ceremony. So give me Washington.
I like it. I thought really hard about taking them last year, and obviously that would have been great if I had. The one reason I didn't, and it kind of holds for why I had them a little bit lower on my board this year, is Penix gets hurt a lot. Like, I don't think he finished a full season before last season at Washington. I think he had 3 straight season-ending injuries. If he stays healthy, they can easily win 10 games. They could win the conference. If he gets hurt, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it feels like they could be like 4-8 or 11-2 again. And it's all going to hinge on how healthy he is. Okay.
We're getting to the end here. We got to start with some of the these final picks though. They played a huge role last year. They're going to play a huge role this year. These final picks, some of us are going to pick teams that are not going to make bowls, and some of us are going to pick teams that are going to win 3 or 4 more games than expected. And it's going to be the swing picks in this draft.
Yeah. I am going to go with UNC here. I need to get an ACC team on the board. There's a pretty good gap between them as my third ACC team and my fourth and fifth teams, just in terms of like confidence level in the floor that they can hit. Given that they have Drake May, right? And like top 2 projected picks in the draft, Caleb Williams, you have him. I get the other guy, Drake May. Like, that'll be fun to root for. He's got a lot of his offensive linemen from last season, so I expect that offense to continue to perform at a high level. If we're just talking talent-wise, they recruit at like a top 20-ish level, which in the ACC puts them, squarely in that top 4 tier. They're terrible on defense. They're terrible. I think under Mac Brown, they've averaged a defensive ranking of like 86th in the country. They were 105th last year in defensive rating. They didn't really add much to change that. They did lose their offensive coordinator as well. There's a lot of things that leave me feeling a little shaky about them, but this is who I got to go with when you grab Clemson and Florida State, and I do feel like it's in the range where you could have grabbed them too and forced me to take teams that I'm less confident in. So I will go UNC.
So I think I had UNC on my list just because you kind of have to, even though I would not have wanted to choose them. Like, that's again my bias. UNC handshake emoji, Penn State 2022. That's kind of how I feel about that. But you're right. You get Drake May, and when you have Drake May, that was probably the best pick where you could go there. I'm going to take my second wild card here, and I'm going to go ahead and grab Utah. And I'm going to grab Utah because of the culture that Kyle Whittingham has established and the fact that they have an experienced quarterback, Cam Rising. And every single year, no matter who's there, you know that they're going to be physically tough. You know that they're going to be difficult they're going to be difficult to play. They're going to be difficult to beat. They're going to beat you up. And look, their over under this year is 8.5. I think that's a testament to how deep it feels like the Pac-12 is. They're the defending champs. They get Florida at home in the non-conference. They have to play at Baylor, which is going to be tough. But I like that they get Oregon at home. I like that they get UCLA at home. I just need them to win one of the 3 big road games that they have. They've got Oregon State, USC, and Washington all on the road. Fortunately for me, Washington and USC are both on my team now, so I'm guaranteeing myself a victory in any of those games. Basically, I'm out here rooting against UCLA, Oregon State, and Oregon, and I like the fact that my team gets your team at home. So yeah, like give me Utah, give me culture, give me toughness, give me the Utes.
Yeah, I almost took them with my last pick. The schedule just scares me, man, and the fact that some of their more difficult games are at the beginning of the year when we don't know how healthy Cam Rising is going to be. I mean, they get Florida at home, which they're going to be favored in that game, but probably by like 3 points or less would be my guess. They get UCLA, Oregon at home. At Baylor is a tricky one. At USC, at Washington. I mean, their schedule might be the most difficult of any good team in the country.
Yeah. I think that's why their over-under is 8.5 and not higher.
Yep.
It's because the schedule is difficult. But I like the fact that like the swing games for me in this competition are going to be them at home.
Yeah. I mean, they've been the best program in the Pac-12 the last 2 or 3 years. So
right,
you're investing in good recent history. So you've used up your wild cards now, right?
Yep. So real quick recap of where we are. I have a Big 12 team and 2 SEC teams left that I will have to be making those selections. You have an ACC team, you have a Big 12 team, and you have a Big 10 team, and you have a Pac-12 team. So you have to pick from all 4 of those conferences, and that's where we're at.
Yep. I'm going to go with the Big 12 team here. I'm just deciding which one I want to go with.
Yeah, that's smart because I can't pick in the ACC or the Big 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the Pac-12.
Technically, yeah, you can't pick ACC.
The only school, the only conference I can pick that you can pick is the Big 12. So this is really the last.
This is the last
draft pick. Yep.
This is the last contentious draft pick.
Yep.
Oh man, this is tough. So I'll talk through who I'm considering, and then I'll just make the decision as I talk through it. But I'm thinking either TCU or Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State, I feel very like I just like Mike Gundy, and I feel like they're a consistent 7 to 11 game winning program. Whereas TCU, we saw the highest of highs last year, but we haven't necessarily seen it consistently over a long period of time under their coach. He's new, so I don't know. Maybe he's great and they win 10 games every year, or maybe they go back to like the 4-8 team they were a few years ago. So that's my conundrum right now. And I think because I evaluate them so closely together, I'm going to go with the team that I think has the easier schedule as the tiebreaker, and I'm just going to go with Oklahoma State.
Okay.
It might bite me because I do have more faith in Chandler Morris being a high-level quarterback than I think Alan Bowman's taken over the job since Spencer Sanders transferred to Ole Miss. But I just feel like Oklahoma State had like their worst possible season last year, and they still went 7-6. They're still a pretty talented roster by Big 12 standards. Gundy's always going to have these guys, playing hard. They've done nothing but at least meet, if not wildly exceed expectations ever since he's been in Stillwater. Their defense fell off dramatically. They lost their defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, to Ohio State before last season. But I do think they have the talent to bounce back in that regard. This team was like top 10 at one point last year. I think by the middle of the season, they jumped up to like 7th or 8th, and then they lost 5 of their last 6 games. So it was disappointing, but their schedule, they get Oklahoma at home, they get Kansas State. I think they avoid Texas. So I'm going to go with Oklahoma State and hope they can kind of grind out an 8 or 9 win season for me.
I did not have what's interesting about this is I did not have Oklahoma State or TCU under consideration for my Big 12 pick.
Interesting.
Okay. So I have a Big 12 pick and 2 SEC picks, and you have an ACC pick, a Big 10 pick, and a Pac-12 pick. So we really, this just comes down to what we want to do here. I think I'm going to get a little wonky. I really want to get a little wonky. Why not? Just put my, step out into the abyss.
This is where it all falls apart for him, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh man, you're right. It might all fall apart for me right here. What am I gonna do? That's such a tough pick. Okay, my first pick that I'm gonna make is Texas A&M in the SEC. Because that's the pick that I feel the most confident in of all these ones that I'm debating. I think that with Bobby Petrino there now, I like Connor Wegman as a quarterback. They're loaded talent-wise. We know how elite they've recruited. This is still a team that last year beat LSU's ass when LSU needed to win the game. Like, this is a team that is so talented that they can be having a disastrous season and still go compete at a very high level. They almost beat Alabama. Look, the schedule, they're in the SEC West. The schedule is going to be difficult. They play at Miami. I'm not necessarily too concerned with that. I think that A&M has a lot of pressure and a lot of expectations entering into the season, but I'm making a bet on talent. So give me Texas A&M. My other SEC pick. So I am debating right now between Tennessee and Kentucky. John, are you really debating picking Kentucky? I am. Why? Because Josh Pate has been hyping them up with all of the information that he's been hearing from Kentucky's training camp all offseason. And I can't, it's been stuck in my head. Devin Leary's a stud. Kentucky's going to be a stud. And my boy Tavion is still there. So you know what? Am I going to talk myself into this? Am I going to talk myself into this? All right. I'm going to talk myself into this. I'm picking Kentucky over Tennessee. Wow. This might be the factor of where this all falls apart, but I'm going to go for it. There's not going to be anything plausible here that is going to make this seem like a smart decision. It's all gut. It's all vibes. And it's all Josh Pate hyping up Kentucky for the last month and a half that Kentucky's going to be good. And I think that Kentucky's been really solid. I like Devin Leary as a quarterback. They get Tennessee at home. So what was the deciding factor? I was staring at both schedules just a second ago, and I saw that Kentucky plays Tennessee at home, and that is the deciding factor. And then for my Big 12 pick, TCU was great last year. Texas Tech has gotten a lot of steam this year. They're like kind of the sexy pick. They have a pretty hard schedule, though. They play Oregon, but they get them at home. I wouldn't be shocked if Texas Tech wins that game. But at West Virginia, that's always difficult to go to Morgantown. At Baylor, that's a tough game. At BYU, that's a tough game. You're talking about games against teams that are less talented than them, but difficult places to play. They have to play at Texas, but then, they get to avoid Oklahoma. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to settle on Kansas State. I'm going to settle on the defending conference champions. Why? They avoid Oklahoma. They get TCU at home. I don't know that I necessarily feel great about this, but I think that Kansas State has developed a culture of winning. Will Howard's back. They're going to be tough. They're probably going to go 8-4. But in this pick, I think that 8 wins, 8 culture wins, is something that I'm just gonna lock in here. Give me Kansas State. And I don't necessarily feel great about any of those last picks, but you know what? Here we are.
Yeah, I mean, this is the challenge at the end of the draft. Did we have anyone we picked at the end of the draft last year that ended up like being a huge surprise? I can't.
Let's see. So our end of the draft picks last year were UCLA, Michigan State, and Ole Miss for me. UCLA had a good season.
Yeah.
My Miami pick
almost had a great season.
Your picks were UCF, Pitt, Oklahoma State. So
pretty much
by 3 wins in this segment last year, and that was pretty critical. You beat me by 4 wins overall, and these 3 picks for you beat me by 3 picks.
Yeah, so it's basically avoiding a really bad team in those picks, and that's what you got Michigan State, and that killed you.
I took Michigan State. I did not take Penn State, and that one selection right there was the deciding difference in the competition. So this is like critical. This is critical, but I say all that, and I still just chose Kentucky over Tennessee. But I just kind of want to buy into the Kentucky hype. So
I feel like you're going to be fine with Kentucky. I mean, maybe you'll regret it if Tennessee has a great season, but they're a solid program. The Devin Leary hype. I mean, I had NC State last year. He's okay.
Yeah.
He's okay. Maybe he's better than I'm giving him credit for. I know he was really good 2 years ago. Who maybe NC State had larger problems within their offense last year.
It's just been low key a solid program for the last, few years, really since Mark built it. What I'm just pulling up now: 7, 10, 5 and 6 in the COVID year, 8 and 5, 10 and 3.
Yeah.
The last 5 seasons. Like, that's really solid. If you give me 8 to 9 wins, basically all that I'm looking for here is I'm looking for Kentucky to be within 1 win or loss of Tennessee, and it will have been a fine decision. I also give myself some outs in the fact that, like, Kentucky, Louisville, I guarantee myself a win at the end of the year in that game. And I just want to, I don't know. I'm talking myself into it. I don't know if it's the right decision.
You're guaranteeing Kentucky beats Louisville?
No, I'm guaranteeing that I have. Oh shoot! No, I forgot.
I had Louisville. I don't think.
Had Louisville. Damn it!
Yeah.
Damn it! I had Louisville as one of my wildcard teams that I was going to take, and I didn't take them. So never mind. Never mind.
I have your intel. Now I'm wondering if I should.
Never mind.
All right. Well, so I had TCU, OK State, and Kansas State as like the same level. So I think it makes sense you went with Kansas State. They're low key like a more successful program than you think for about 20 years running now.
Yeah.
And then Texas A&M, after last year, I just really did not want them again. Although I admit they're extremely talented. They have a real quarterback this year. They're loaded at wide receiver. They have a real offensive coordinator. If it works out, they're the type of team like Texas that'll win you this. If it doesn't, they're going to lose you this competition. So
yeah, I should just say, and I'm locked in because I made the selection, but I'm a dumbass. I should have picked Tennessee over Kentucky. I'm just going to say that right now. I'm a dumbass.
We'll see. I'm not.
I think it was wrong.
Joe Montana could be a disaster. Like, we don't.
Could be, but I don't think he will be. I think I definitively made the wrong decision, and it's been a minute and a half since I made it, and I'm just going to have to eat it for the entire rest of the next 3.5 months.
Oh my God. This devolved into a therapy session over the last 3 minutes. I love it.
High level content. If any of you watch this, high level content. All we need is to be platform.
Doesn't get any better than this, guys.
I know it does not.
All right, so I have an
ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12.
Yep. Okay. I'll go and actually, I'm gonna save ACC for last. Pac-12. I'm going with UCLA. I'm going with UCLA. I actually had them ranked higher than Washington on my board. A lot of it's schedule related. Looking at their home schedule, there wasn't a single game on there that I thought they weren't capable of winning or being heavy favorites in. They do go on the road to Utah and USC. That'll be tough. They did lose a lot of studs from last year's team. DTR was one of my favorite quarterbacks in the country. Zach Charbonnet is getting a lot of hype in the NFL circles as a rookie right now. I think he's on Seattle. I think he was a great running back. Jake Bobo always seemed to be getting touchdowns at wide receiver. They lost a lot. At the same time, I just think Chip Kelly is always capable of crafting a good offense. I think they brought in a lot of good transfers. They're going to have a talented offense regardless. And the QB situation is pretty interesting. They got Colin Schlee from Kent State. He's better than I realized. He was a pretty solid transfer. And then Dante Morris is a freshman. He was the number 4 overall recruit in the country. Has anyone won that job yet? I think it was still up in the air.
If they have, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I believe it's still up in the air, but I expect the quarterback level of play to still be good, if not like DTR level in the immediate term. So a little bit riskier given the turnover, but I think Chip Kelly has a solid 8+ win team year in, year out that he's built over there. And they suck on defense, but every Pac-12 team besides Utah sucks on defense. So it is what it is in that conference. So I'm going to get UCLA. With my Big Ten pick, I'm going to get Iowa. I hate it, but at the same time, I actually think it could be very good for me. because they always win at least 8 games, and they win 10 or 11 games more than you think. More than you think. They've been a top 6.
If they were like a top 50 offense last year, they probably win 10 or 11 games.
Yeah. They'd probably win the national championship if they had a top 50 offense. It's just never going to happen. It's never going to happen. So here's some stats. They finished 6th or better in defensive efficiency the last 4 years. They have ranked 86th or lower in offensive efficiency in 3 of the last 4 years, and they bottomed out at 118th in offense last season. So just the worst offense ever. I think I heard on a podcast that Kirk Ferentz has like a clause in his contract that he needs to have an offense that averages 25 points per game or something.
His son is the offensive
coordinator. It's his son's offensive coordinator. Yeah. It's his son. And if they don't average 25 a game, he loses his job.
How insane is that?
I thought it was a joke when I heard it, and then I looked it up, and I was like, no, this is real. I actually think their offense will be a little bit better this year. They got Cade McNamara, who was starting on Michigan 2 years ago, right? He's okay. They got Eric All, who is a pretty good tight end for them. So they have some weapons now. They avoid Ohio State and Michigan on their schedule. They're at Penn State. They're at Wisconsin. They get Minnesota at home. I think they're going to win 9 games. And I think they're going to go toe-to-toe with Wisconsin for the division. I'm banking on Wisconsin not separating from the pack in year 1 of the Fickle era.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go Iowa. I'm probably not going to watch a single one of their games.
I think that was a good pick. I feel better about making you take them and having Wisconsin, but I think that that's the right 5th team there.
No, you did good forcing me into picking them. Like I had Wisconsin much higher, but I had Iowa as a top 20. I had them as my 20th ranked team, so I'm not bummed to get them. Okay, ACC. I'm picking between Louisville and Miami. And I was starting to lean Miami, but now I'm thinking, John mentioned Louisville as one of his wild card teams. Why is that? So the thing is, I like a lot of the momentum that program has. I think they just brought in a top 25 class and a bunch of good transfers. Jeff Brom is the head coach now. He left from Purdue, where he won the Big Ten West Division last year. He has I think his first year at Purdue, he turned them around really well. And it's not like he has to turn around a bad team in his first year. At Louisville, they went 8-5 last season. They were pretty good. And they're my wild card. Like I want to take them, but at the same time, I'm looking at you having Clemson and Florida State, and I'm wondering if I need to take a big swing here and take Miami. And I got to think about it for a sec, because Miami sucks. They suck, but they might be good.
I
don't know.
That's a great way to phrase it. That's a great way to phrase it.
Suck. They might be good.
I have a take, but I will save it until after your pick.
Miami's schedule is super difficult. Super difficult. They play Clemson and Florida State. They're at UNC. They're at NC State. It's not like Louisville's schedule is very easy either, and they're at Miami. Screw it, man. I'm going with Miami. Whatever. It could turn out great for me. I guess if they bottom out, it's 5-7 like last year. I gotta think they'll make a bowl. Like they recruit at pretty much a top 10 level. You were singing their praises when you drafted them last year.
I thought they were going to be significantly better.
Yeah, and maybe it's just it was Cristobal's first year, right? Maybe it was just year 1 Blues and they turn around. I'm gonna have to talk myself into this now, but they
have talent, man. You know that they have talent, and Tyler Van Dyke is back. He's a really good quarterback.
Yep. So I'm gonna go with Miami. I had Louisville ranked a little bit higher just as a safety pick, but I think given how this draft played out, I need to take a swing there. I feel like I've been taking mostly safe teams. I need one swing. Given that you have both Texas and Texas A&M, I feel like Miami kind of completes the like holy trinity of super highly hyped programs that you never know what's going to happen.
I was going to say, when I'm looking at these schedules and thinking about if you're saying you want to take a swing, we are head-to-head Miami and A&M. We're head-to-head Miami and Clemson. We're head-to-head Miami and Florida State.
Yep.
And of those 3 games, you're going to be the underdog at all 3 of those games. But if Miami wins any of them, then that's a huge W for you and loss for me. Plus, you know,
and I think they get A&M at home.
They do. They get A&M and Clemson at home.
And Clemson at home, so
right. And Miami gets Louisville at home. If you wanted to have a little bit of a tiebreaker there, like I think that's probably the right decision. I've bought a little bit into the Louisville hype, but at the same time, I think the Miami top to bottom is a significantly more talented team. So, all right, here we go. The draft is completed. This is the moment in time when I'm going to feel great about my teams. You're going to feel great about your teams. Notre Dame plays against Navy in about 2 hours here. Southern Cal plays tonight against San Jose State. If either one of us does not get a win today, that's really bad news for both of us.
Could you imagine?
Southern Cal is favored by 30. That would be horrid if either one of our teams loses. But I think the most awesome part about this, and every time we've done it, I felt the same way. I leave the draft going, my team's going to win. And you leave the draft going, my team's going to win. Like, it's so balanced. There's so many scenarios that could play out here where you run away with it, I run away with it, you beat me close, I beat you close. Like, it looks on paper even, and we can speak ourselves into various different scenarios, which is what makes this so fun.
Yeah. I mean, you're without a doubt going to have the ACC champ. I'm without a doubt going to have the SEC champ. I think
we say that. Look, we say that, but we don't know that for sure.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe Texas A&M.
Goes 11-1 and wins the ACC.
Yeah,
that can happen. I mean, or A&M. Like, who knows? Like, I think that's. Look, I think that you're right. You're right. If we were betting, you would have the SEC champ. I would have the ACC champ. I can't definitively say that we're going to win. Either one of us is going to win.
Big Ten, but I have a lot of faith in Penn State being frisky this year.
I have the math. I have the advantage in the Big Ten. I would say the odds are in my favor because I have the two
teams that win it every year, basically.
Teams that win it every year in the East, and the team that's supposed to be the best in the West. So I at least have a little bit of an out there if Penn State does beat Michigan and Ohio State. But I think that Penn State could easily do it. If Penn State played Iowa, I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be surprised. Wouldn't be shocked. And then I think we're like Oregon could win the Pac-12. Oklahoma could win the Big 12 just as easily as Southern Cal and Texas could win those conferences. So
it's going to be close, man. It's going to be close. And as always, a couple of these teams we drafted, probably at least one team we drafted in the first 10 picks could end up being a huge disappointment,
Yep, absolutely.
It's likely to happen. I mean, preseason rankings throw them out the door the minute the game starts. So can't wait, man. And NFL draft coming up in we got to do it in the next 2 weeks, basically. So
NFL draft coming up soon. This is going to be good. Okay, cool. Just to recap, I'll recap one more time really quick, and then we'll hop out of here. Again, for the uninitiated, the uninformed, all 6 of you, Dave and I do a recap of how each of our teams did at the end of each week. Sometimes we write a little bit about the games if we have something to write about, but we post all that on our blog, click.substack.com. We just have fun with it. Look, we're not doing it for any other reason other than we enjoy creating content. We enjoy talking about sports. We enjoy talking and hanging out with each other. It gives us an excuse to do all of them, and it helps keep us on a schedule where we hold ourselves accountable to basically hang out and get to have conversations about sports. So that's fun. To recap, David has Georgia, Bama, Penn State, LSU, Oregon, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, UNC, Oklahoma State, UCLA, Iowa, and Miami. I've got Michigan, Ohio State, and Wisconsin in the Big Ten. I've got Clemson, Florida State in the ACC. And I've got Southern Cal, Washington, and Utah in the Pac-12, Kentucky A&M in the SEC, and K-State and Texas in the Big 12. We'll see. Who the heck knows?
It's like up until Oklahoma in my draft, I'm like, oh, I feel great. And then I look at the last 5 teams I drafted, and I'm like,
I can say the exact same. I
Yeah.
can say the exact same.
It's how it's supposed to go, right? I mean, those are
Yeah.
our bottom picks for a reason.
Yeah. But anyways, we're going to upload this to our YouTube channel, and which you would be consuming it if you're still an hour and 24 minutes in watching us. But Dave, feel better. Hope you rest up and heal up quickly.
I feel much better. My teams are getting the upper hand in this competition.
I'm gonna really. It's gonna feel bad knowing that you're gonna have an Achilles injury and you're gonna have to Venmo me $1,000 at the end of this fall. But you know what? We're still gonna be friends either way.
As if the medical bills weren't high enough, man.
The one thing we didn't talk about, Dave's moving to Durham, where I live, which means we're going to begin to watch and track these games in person this year.
Yeah, maybe we'll come up with
something even more electric. Going to make it even more electric.
Yeah, man. Can't wait. Right. Pleasure as always, John.
It's football season officially. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk soon.